Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm, and you are watching a movie on what if Naruto was executed by Hinata. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now, wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Hell. When people think of this place, the first thing that comes to mind is a fiery pit full of different kinds of demons torturing people for their own sick pleasure. They would be right to think that, since hell had changed from what it used to be. Sinners were no longer tortured there like they were in the past. Now, the city was about the size of a modern city. It had television, businesses that targeted people with weak wills, and so much more, so the sinners who lived there stayed there. But it wasn't all roses, because once a year there was a purge where everyone in hell went crazy and killed as many people as they could. Those who were killed just stopped existing. There were no resurrections or anything like that. The souls of those people went to the void, which was nothing, and stayed there until time stopped. Lucifer, a demon, was the first one to go to hell. He is now in charge of everything there. He was put down because he questioned God's own word, and he will have to pay for that for all of time. Still, he had help from a few other people who took charge of one of the 5 points that made up the plane of existence. The people in charge of these places changed all the time because of power struggles, but they rarely got what they wanted, which was to take over the section from the person in charge. Even though hell was pretty big, it did have an end, which was just a cliff that went straight into the void. So hell was basically a big floating island with a square cage underneath that had a lot of complicated seals to keep it closed and the person who lived there inside at all costs. Who was this person that Lucifer took it upon himself to seal away? It was just a young man who had been sent here even though he shouldn't have been. Because of where he was a threat to all of hell, just like Lucifer. For you see, a demon's power in hell came from how dark their heart was. But the power of light was also used to send this man to hell. This gave him a lot more power than most demons, since it was easy for him to wipe out their own army, since none of them had faced an angel or someone like him since the war that turned hell into a floating island. He had good reason to be afraid, because the new demon went on a rampage that rivaled those of some of the most powerful demons in hell's history. In his rage, he turned a fifth of hell into ash before Lucifer and the rulers of the 5 sections put him in a cage where he has stayed to this day. For demons to fix the damage, it took hundreds of years, and because of this, the man became known as the Light Demon. But in the thousands of years after the young man was locked up, the Light Demon became more of a legend than anything else. Those who knew about him died off one by one until only Lucifer remembered him, and even then, he forgot about him because there was no way for him to get out of the cage. Or at least he thought this. The only thing the man did in that cage was think and gather his strength while he waited alone. He gave a lot of thought to what he wanted to do and how he was going to make up for what had happened to him to put him in this situation. And if there was one thing he had learned from it was that an Uzumaki could do the impossible. And Naruto Uzumaki wasn't the only one. Naruto's life had never been good from the moment he was born, and it was his father's actions that made it so he would be sealed away in hell for all time. On the night he was born, a man in a mask attacked his mother as she was giving birth. This man let out the demon known as the Nine-Tailed Fox, or Kyubi, into the village of Konoha, where it destroyed a lot of things before Minato was able to seal it away in his own son. But in order to do that, he had to give up his own soul. He had to do this to get the Shinigami to do the job, and giving up one soul was the price. From the first night he was born, the people in charge of the village started manipulating the boy in small ways to make him a weapon for the village. Their plan was to beat and abuse the boy until he gave in. They also wanted to make him want to show everyone they were wrong about him and become the Hokage, the leader of the village. Over time, they were able to make their bad plan work, and the village did well because Naruto got them so many trading agreements and allies. And as he did it, the people in charge could only laugh because their plan was working and the boy had become a tool they could use however they wanted. But some things led to a new war, one in which Naruto and his friend Sasuke fought the mother of all chakra and beat her for good. All of the elemental nations were saved from destruction because of this, and Naruto was happy. A year after the war ended, he was about to get married to the love of his life, Hinata Hyuga. It was going to be a big wedding with all the most powerful people from all over the world there. All of them were glad to be there for Naruto on his special day because he had saved their lives. When he said, "I do," he was smiling and his friend Koyuki, the spring daimyo, was performing the ceremony. But as soon as he said those words, everything went to hell, both figuratively and literally. It turned out that everything had been planned from the start, and that Hinata had hidden a knife in the flowers she held at the ceremony. She pulled out a knife that had been dipped in a poison that the demon locked inside him couldn't get rid of. With a wicked grin on her face, she stabbed him in the heart. Naruto fell to his knees in pain as the poison slowly spread to all of his vital organs and started to kill him. But as he slowly died, he had to watch as the guests from other countries were killed by the shinobi that Konoha had been hiding for just this moment. As his sight went away and his body died, he couldn't do anything to save them. The next thing he knew, he was falling into hell itself. He was sent here because when he died, the seal that kept the Kyuubi inside him joined their souls together. And because of that, he was able to do what he did. He had a pure soul and deserved to go up to the plains of heaven, but the demon that was locked inside of him pulled him down into the depths. This had never happened. Lucifer had put him in the cage to try to destroy the light in him so that he wouldn't be a threat anymore. It did this by showing him the details of the truth of his life as if he were a third-party observer. For thousands of years, he was forced to see that his whole life had been a lie. He saw his father seal up the demon inside him so that the village could use it as a weapon. If he had lived to see another day, he never would have thought of Naruto as his son. His own mother, Kushina Uzumaki, had lived through that day. She had Naruto because they had a deal that if she gave him the weapon he wanted, she could leave the village because she was only needed to keep the demon in check. So, she had a child to pass on the curse she was under to him, and then she went to live with another family until she was old. The villagers, clan leaders, and Sandaime himself planned all the bad things that happened to him so that they could control him, just like they had done his whole life. Jiraiya's teacher, who he thought had died while fighting pain and aim, was actually the one who made the seals. This is because the toads had called him back for medical care, so he did not die that day. Hinata Hyuga, the woman he loved more than anything in the world, hated him. The only reason she did what she did, like act shy and say yes to his proposal, was because her father told her to. He wanted the Hyuga clan to be able to legally claim the vast wealth of the Uzumaki clan for themselves in the future. And this was just the tip of the iceberg because he saw a lot more. And while Lucifer would have usually shown him fake events to do the same thing he was doing now, he had looked into the boy's life and found it funny to show him the truth instead, since it was much worse. Even though his life was a mess, he saw one truth in all the lies he had been told his whole life. Sasuke Uchiha, who had betrayed Konoha, was his real friend. He tried to get revenge for Naruto's death soon after the massacre at the wedding, but he couldn't fight so many people at once, and his anger and hatred made it hard for him to think clearly, so he died, too. The plan to get rid of the light inside him didn't work, because the plan was to break the boy's mind until the darkness took over him and he became a full demon instead of this horrible thing he was now. He didn't let the anger take over his life like Lucifer thought it would. Instead, he used it to make him more determined to find a way to fix everything and live a real life that the people in Konoha would never have let him live. Because he wanted justice for what had been done to him, this drive kept the light inside him strong and growing. Still, the darkness grew along with the light because he was still a demon. When a soul went to hell, their bodies changed into something more demonic, and Naruto was no different. He turned into a white creature with 9 tails. His large tails had black tips, and he could pull them back so they wouldn't get in the way. They only came out that way when he used his power, and the amount of power he was using was shown by the number. His eyes used to be bright blue, but now they were a mix of blue and brown. The ring around his left eye was white, and the ring around his right eye was black. After being locked up for so long, he finally had enough power to get out of his cage, and he blew it up in one big burst. The cage was hanging from several chains that were tied to the island of hell. If he had fallen, he would have gone into the void, but the light he had gave him wings that he used to fly back up to the island. Demons everywhere felt as he used the power to break free, but Lucifer was the one who feared it the most because he knew who had that kind of power to use as his own. He asked the strongest demons to help him because he would need time to put the man in a stronger cage than the last one. He thought that Naruto would attack him in his palace because he had been sealed for so long, but that did not happen. In fact, he didn't attack in any sense of the word. Lucifer sent men out to find Naruto, but no matter how hard they looked, they couldn't find him. This surprised Lucifer. Lucifer started to think that the boy might have fallen into the void, and as the weeks went by, it seemed more likely that this had happened. Naruto had not done that. He had just used his illusion powers to make himself look like someone else and then walked to his destination. Near the center of hell, there was a huge library where a demon called the Record Keeper lived. The books in this library told the stories of the people who lived here now and in the past. He saw that the building was huge. The magic that made it put it in a kind of subspace, so the inside was much bigger than the outside. Naruto knew he had a lot of work to do, so he made as many clones as he could, which was about 1,000, and started looking for the names of the people he wanted to get back at. He thought that what they did to him would have sent them to hell, but he wanted to make sure so that, if they were still alive, he could kill them himself. This is where he lived for the next few hundred years, since he could not die unless he was killed and there were so many books to read. Even though the number was huge, it didn't go on forever. So, in the end, he read every single book in the room. As he finished, he started to feel angry because almost no one he knew from the village had been sent here. This meant that they were able to move up because of what they did, while he was forced to move down. This was wrong in his mind, but he couldn't go after them because he was in hell. He had not left the library in years, and he didn't know what he was going to do next. Then he saw Charlie, Lucifer's daughter, talk on the news about a hotel she was opening to help demons find forgiveness. Most of the demons laughed when she told them about her plan and sang a song that Naruto had to admit was pretty good. He laughed because he now knew what he needed to do. He then found the hotel she mentioned and started to make things right. Charlie didn't know who he was because he didn't say he was the light demon that Lucifer had told her about years ago. People didn't figure out who he was until they saw that her plan worked with him and other demons who came along over time. The news came to talk to her so they could insult her on live TV, but Naruto was there to help her deal with the press, and Lucifer saw him there because the feed was live. The man went straight to the hotel and started trouble as he tried to put Naruto back in the new cage he had built, but Naruto wouldn't let himself be locked up like an animal again. Everyone in hell looked on as the two of them got into a huge fight. Lucifer was right to be afraid of Naruto, who had the power to match his own. He tried to force Naruto into the cage. But Naruto used his power to destroy it while glaring at the demon who tried to put him back in it. But the power he had to use to destroy it drained him, and Lucifer took advantage of this by shooting a huge blast at him that was meant to kill him. But Naruto had been fighting for years, which made his demonic power make his instincts much better than they had been before. But as he tried to avoid the huge attack, he saw that it was going to hit Charlie and her girlfriend Veggie instead. Naruto used all of his power to move quickly and throw them out of the way of the attack. He then used what little power he had left to protect himself from the attack. But it wasn't enough, and it did him a lot of harm. He lost both legs and an arm while he was bleeding out on the ground, but he wasn't sad as he died. Because of his blood, the ground around him turned from a literal hell to a place where grass and flowers grew. Charlie thanked him for saving her life as she cried over his dying body. When her tear hit his body, he started to glow. People who saw this turned away because the light was so bright. Then a ray of light came down and started to lift him out of hell. Naruto thanked her for her help and took off into the sky. Demons watched in shock because they didn't think the hotel could help people find redemption in this way. When Naruto flew up to the heavens, he went through the golden gates that were the entrance. Once he was inside, he started his plan to get justice, which was what he had always wanted. Even though he had found salvation, that didn't mean that he was no longer in the dark. And just as light's power was in hell, darkness's power was in heaven. So, he looked around and found that this place had a library like the one in hell. But the main difference was that heaven was always growing to make room for new souls, while hell had to get rid of a lot of people to make room. So he went back to the library and made clones to find the people he wanted to punish. His evil body went back to the way it looked when he died, and he used his power to make clones again to start his search. Again, it took him a few hundred years to find the people he was looking for, but he had all of eternity to look for them, since the way the afterlife worked didn't change just because the scenery did. So, in time, he found the people he was looking for, and one by one, he went after them. He would always remember how the people who made his life hell looked when he used his power over darkness to kill them. But the more of them he killed, the more he had to deal with. It seems like the main energy source would get stronger as he killed more of the polar opposite. So, each time he killed someone, the darkness inside him got stronger than the light, and his vision got worse. In the end, he did what he set out to do, but it almost cost him all of his light to do so. He didn't get back full control of his mind until he was done with his job and justice was done. He meditated to bring his power back into balance, and while he was doing that, God finally found out what was going on. So, he did what Lucifer did and tried to find a way to seal Naruto away so he wouldn't be a threat to anyone else. Even though Naruto didn't want this to happen, he attacked him. Everyone who saw this thought the boy was crazy for attacking the Lord of Creation, and maybe he was, but Naruto just wanted a simple life, and this creator had never helped him when he was young. Even though the odds were against him, Naruto won and stood over the body of God. The more damage was done to him, the more the heavens began to tear apart. There were huge earthquakes and other natural disasters that didn't happen here very often. Naruto held up his hand, and an orb of power pulsed with both light and dark, making it gray and far more destructive than should be possible. Naruto took it in his hand and told God to fix what he had let go wrong. God was scared of Naruto because he saw a man who would willingly destroy everything out of anger for the things that had happened to him in the past. And the only reason he gave in and listened was because the whole world was in danger. So they made a deal. Naruto would be sent back, but he would only have a small amount of his light and darkness power. He would go back to being 6 years old, and the Kyuubi would be taken out of his body and sent to hell to live out the rest of eternity there, so that Naruto would never be sent to hell for an unfair reason again. So, Naruto's decision would be fair when it came to being put into action. So, they shook hands to seal the deal, and a doorway opened for Naruto to go through. Naruto stopped just short of going in, turned around, and said one thing. If it's any consolation, I'm sorry things turned out this way. Then Naruto got a second chance at life. Naruto was sent back to his 6-year-old body with a lot of the power he had in the future, just as he had promised. He laughed as he thought this, because he had really thought that God would lie and not give him anything. But it looked like he was the word itself, and he felt like Kyuubi was no longer in him. He was in a good mood because the villagers had caught him off guard and beat him up not long before he went back to his old self. He checked his skills quickly, but not too much, because if he did too much, every shinobi in this cursed village would attack him, and he wasn't ready for that yet. He was as strong as a Jonin at the moment. He knew that as his body got bigger, so would his strength. Even though he had the body of a 6-year-old, he was much smarter than most people because he knew so much more than they could ever know. He made plans to make things better because he knew what was going to happen. He swore that he wouldn't let any more of his friends die so that this fucking village could be the best like they wanted. So, knowing that the Inuzuka would follow him, he used his power to completely hide his scent so that they couldn't find him. He was going to make the first smart choice in this new timeline. He was going to leave this village so that he could come back and destroy it later. The first place he went was to his father's house. He went into the place easily because no one was watching him at the time because the people who were supposed to were not doing their jobs. On the other hand, what could a 6-year-old do? He couldn't run away because expert trackers would find him right away. So, because they were so careless, he was able to get into the house without any trouble because he was filled with the man's blood and was able to break the seal on the door. Minato would have never let him into this house if he had the chance, but Naruto could only smirk about that. He went into the man's study and saw all the plans Minato had for him if he had lived to see Naruto become the village weapon. Somehow, they were worse than what he had already been through. He found all the scrolls that had his father's famous jutsu on them and put them in a sealing scroll with all the plans that Minato had written down before he died. Then, he made a quick choice that would help him get out of the village more easily. He went into the kitchen, opened the gas stove, turned it all the way on, and gas started to leak out. He then found a candle, lit it, and took it to another room. Once everything was ready, he left the house and went back to his own apartment, where he left a note for someone to find when they finally decided to come and look for him. It was a simple note. "Fuck you. You old liar who calls himself a Hokage," he said. He made sure to put his full name on the note to show Hiruzen that he knew the truth and would no longer believe the lies. The plan worked perfectly, with the Namikaze house catching fire and a lot of people going to try to put it out. As they did this, Naruto covered his scent again and left the village to find a new place to live so he could get stronger by gathering his strength. Still, he didn't know where he could hide to do it. He would go see one of his old friends, but they weren't his friends yet because the way he made friends with them hadn't happened yet. Then he came up with the perfect place to do it. The old saying went, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," and right now, Orochimaru was Konoha's biggest enemy. He found where the man was hiding by using his powers and what he knew from the past. He then told the shinobi who were hiding among the people that he was looking for Orochimaru. The man came over to talk to him because he was curious about why Naruto had come to him in this way. Naruto just laughed and said that he knew Orochimaru wanted to attack Konoha. This surprised and angered the man, so he told his shinobi to kill the kid. Naruto killed the few shinobi who attacked him without much trouble. He then rushed forward and slammed Orochimaru's head into the ground. As he did this, he thought about what happened during the invasion that didn't work. Orochimaru was shocked by all of this, but he was willing to listen to the boy after that. He asked Naruto how he knew all of this in the first place, but Naruto just said he had his own ways that he wouldn't tell him. Orochimaru had a feeling that the kid wouldn't give him anything, so he just let it go, at least for now. Since all he wanted was a place to hide from the people who would be looking for him, Naruto offered him a sort of alliance. So, Orochimaru told him how to get to an underground village that he no longer lived in. In exchange for not telling anyone where he was, Naruto would help him during the invasion. Naruto agreed to this because he didn't like the village, and once the terms were set, he left to go to his new home. Once he got there, he used shadow clones to help rebuild the place into a training area with magical seals to hide his presence. He also sealed off the entrance so no one else could get in, just in case Orochimaru turned against him. Jiraiya, who he knew would be the person looking for him the most, wouldn't be able to break these seals because, even though he was good at seals, he didn't have access to magic like Naruto did, so he wouldn't be able to fight them. He stayed hidden from the rest of the world and had his clones hunt for food while he worked out to get stronger. He even found and raised 2 different animals from a young age so that they could be his familiars and tell him what was going on in the world while he waited. He had a wolf pup whose mother had been killed by a hunter, and he helped fix a raven's broken wing. These people became his friends because he was lonely and glad for the company. With the ability to see the world through their eyes, he saw things happen that he had only heard about. By doing this, he could see that the Sandaime was slowly going crazy because Naruto had left the village, which made him angry. He was only mad at first because he thought they would have found him by now and brought him back, but no one could find him. Even though they tried to stop it, the situation got worse when the Namikaze house burned down. There was nothing that could be done to stop it because the seals that kept the place safe had been moved. Since the seals had also been destroyed, they could only get in after the fire had destroyed almost everything. Then they found out that the house had been destroyed by a fire caused by a gas leak. This made most people confused, since no one could get inside the house because Minato was the only one who could. However, Hiruzen knew who did this, and his face had lost all its color because he knew who it was. When he finally went to Naruto's bad apartment and saw the note that Naruto had signed with his full name, it showed that his fears were right. Hiruzen called Jiraiya back and set up a meeting with him, the shinobi council members, and the clan leaders. They found out the truth, which made them angry because Naruto wasn't supposed to know the truth about his family, and they were told to look for him while they were on missions. As they didn't do what they were told to do to find him, Naruto got stronger at home. He also thought about how, now that he knew the truth, he could make the future even better than it could already be. Then he thought of all the people who had died too soon but had had so much to offer. He laughed because he would make sure they lived this time. So, he sent shadow clones to each member of the Sound Village and persuaded them to join his side one by one. Some were harder to do, but he was able to do them in the end because he was very convincing in how he did things. He was only a few hundred years old, but he knew as much as someone who had lived for thousands of years. Naruto didn't leave his house for the first time in years until he was 12. As he expected, his power had grown past cage level, and now he knew what he had to do since he had so much time to plan while he waited. He had made his own clothes from the clothes that had been left here when this place was abandoned. His clothes were a coat like the ones the other members of the Akatsuki wore, but without the clouds. Like Zetsu's skin, his was white on one side and black on the other. He also didn't wear a hat. Instead, he covered his head with a hood and his face with a blank mask. He made the first change in the timeline when he found his mother in Demon Country, where she had set up a nice home for herself. She had been dating a nice guy and was hoping he would soon ask her to marry him so that she could start a new, happy family life. She was really happy right then, and nothing could change that in her mind. But by the time she got back from the store with the food for the anniversary dinner that her boyfriend had asked her to make because he had a surprise for her, Naruto had already come into the house and taken care of the man himself. Since he hadn't done anything to him, he didn't torture him, so he died quickly and without pain. Kushina called out to her boyfriend when she got home, but he didn't answer. She didn't say anything, though, because she thought he might have gone out to get something last minute. But her happy thoughts turned to fear when she saw her boyfriend's head on the table with a card that said, "Happy Anniversary," in front of it. Kushina ran into the room quickly, but that was exactly what Naruto wanted. As soon as she did, the seals he had put in place all worked, closing and locking the doors to the dining room. When Kushina saw someone leaning against the wall, he was scared and asked who he was. She didn't feel ready for this because all of her shinobi gear was in her room, so she didn't know what to do. He didn't say anything because he didn't know what to say. He had been thinking about this moment for a long time, but he didn't know what to say. Kushina tried to tie him up with her chakra chains, but Naruto grabbed them and sent a pulse of his power through them, breaking them into a million pieces. This hurt Kushina a lot, and at that moment Naruto knew exactly what he wanted to say to her as he took off his mask and hood so she could see his face. "Burn in hell, Mom." He knocked her out with those words. He wanted to kill her, but he could use her in the future, so he sealed her up and put her into a magical state of stasis so she wouldn't die while she was sealed away and would stay asleep. Wave Country was the next place he went to. He remembered that Inari had said that the death of a man named Kaiza made him the grumpy kid he was when they first met on the mission he and his team were sent on. So Naruto decided to get rid of two problems at once, or three if you think about it. On the day the man was supposed to be killed, he went to save Kaiza's life by killing Gado and his men. Those who were left ran away in fear to the boat they had used to get to the island country in the first place. When the people thanked him for saving them, they asked for his name. He told them only his first name. He stayed with the village for the next few months to help them finish building the bridge they had started. When it was done, they called it the Great Naruto Bridge, just like they had done before. After doing all of that, he left the village as everyone cheered for him and wished him luck. Naruto couldn't help but smile as he left the country on the bridge he had helped build. The people were his friends from the first time he was there, and things were better now that they didn't have to live under Gado's cruel rule like they did before he came back. So, Inari had a happier childhood, Tsunami had someone to love, Tazuna didn't drink too much to deal with things, and most importantly, they didn't feel like they had to honor him by making a trade deal with Konoha. All of the guests at his wedding were killed, including the 3 people who were mentioned. Once this was done and he went home, he was met by Orochimaru, who was the only one who could get in because his seals only worked when he was there and didn't need to work when he was gone. The man told him that it was time for him to do his part of the deal, and Naruto just nodded to show that he would keep his word because he was a man of his word. Orochimaru left with a smile on his face because all of his plans were coming together. When his invasion destroyed Konoha, he would capture the boy and turn him into the perfect body for him to live in. Orochimaru met with Rasa, the cage of Suna, and Naruto went with him. Naruto knew that Orochimaru had killed the man the first time and used the man's clothes to sneak into the village and keep Suna fighting with his own forces. Naruto decided to fix this, and when Orochimaru tried to kill the man, Naruto killed Orochimaru by burning him from the inside out with his light magic and Kabuto. He did this because he knew that Orochimaru's death would cancel out many of the things that happened in the Fourth Shinobi War. Rasa was surprised and thankful to see this young man save his life. Naruto told Rasa that he had been planning to kill Orochimaru for a while, but that now seemed like the best time to do it. With that, Naruto only asked to borrow Rasa's clothes, just like Orochimaru was going to do, and he put on Orochimaru's face to hide his own identity, since he had once been a Kitsune demon, which are known for being good at making illusions. The rest of the plan worked just like it did the first time, with Naruto taking the place of Orochimaru. When Orochimaru died, the curse seals he had put on people all over the world disappeared. The only difference was that his spot on Team 7 had been taken by another shinobi, whose name he didn't know and didn't really want to learn. So, when the invasion started, the Sound Four took their places and sealed him and the Sandaime in the area, just like Orochimaru had done the first time. Hiruzen was ready to fight Orochimaru, but Naruto dropped the act and glared at the person who had caused all of his childhood problems. Hiruzen was very surprised because he never would have thought this would happen. Naruto talked to the man for a while, telling him that he killed his former student and that he was now the Cage of Sound Village. He then told Hiruzen that he knew what the old man was going to do to him to make him submit and that he would make him pay for it. However, before they started fighting, Naruto used the Edo Tensei to call up a coffin with his mother's body in it. He used her as a sacrifice to call Minato, so he would have to see that all of his plans had been a waste while the village he loved so much was being attacked. He stuck the seal into the back of the man's head not to make him fight, but to make him stand there and watch without being able to do anything. The fight between Naruto and Hiruzen was won by Naruto by a wide margin. Hiruzen even used his summon in its staff form to attack him, but Naruto took his weapon away and broke it in half. When the summon changed back into his real form, Naruto used his power of darkness to kill it to end the poor thing's suffering. Hiruzen was shocked because he had never seen someone with so much power before. It was even more shocking to see that Naruto had so much power when neither of his parents did. So, he used his light magic to make a glowing tree. Then, he used his darkness magic to make a noose around the old Hokage's neck and pulled it hard enough to lift the old man into the air. Hiruzen tried to get out of the noose by clawing at it, but he couldn't. In the end, he died the death a traitor gets. Once he was dead, he turned to Minato, who couldn't do anything but glare and grunt because of the seal. Naruto laughed at him and told him that Konoha would not win like they had in the past. Minato was surprised by this because it was an odd thing to say. Then Naruto did what he did with Orochimaru and pumped his memories into Minato, but unlike with Orochimaru, he showed Minato everything. Minato was shocked in more ways than one. So, as a form of poetic justice, Naruto killed the man by pumping him full of darkness, which was considered demonic energy, so that, like Naruto, the man would be dragged down into hell and suffer forever. And unlike Naruto, his soul didn't have a light in it, because he deserved to be there more than Naruto did. Naruto had just added more weight to his soul to make him sink faster. Now that he had reached his goal, he told his people to go back, which they did. Naruto then told his Sound 4 to get rid of the barrier and leave the area. They did as they were told and left the area. The people of Sound already knew that Orochimaru had died, and they had no problem with it because they thought Naruto was a better leader. He wanted the people to get stronger, and he treated them more like friends than like servants he could test things on to improve himself. About a minute after they left, Jiraiya himself showed up, accompanied by several Anbu members. Naruto laughed when he saw the murderous rage on his face when he saw not only his sensei's body but also Kushina's. When Minato died, the seal broke, and Kushina's body went back to the one who had been killed to use the jutsu. Naruto just laughed at the man's anger and told him that this was just the beginning of the end for this village. He told the man that he would laugh as everyone who hurt him as a child screamed in pain as he destroyed them. After he said that, his shadow clone went away. After becoming the Cage of Sound, Naruto took it easy for a few months. He had his shinobi trained to get stronger, and he went to Snow Country with his bodyguard Kimimaro to protect his old friend Koyuki, just like he had done before. The man was close to dying from a severe case of tuberculosis that Orochimaru couldn't cure himself, but Naruto did. The difference between light magic and dark magic is that light magic is creation itself, so it can heal and make different things. People in heaven had given up violence for simple pleasures that would last forever, so they didn't use their powers to fight like Naruto did. On the other hand, darkness was destruction itself, since demons only hurt people for their own sick reasons. Or they did in the past, since hell is a very different place now than it was in the past. With only the two of them, they kept Koyuki safe from her cruel uncle. They didn't show any mercy to the snow shinobi who stood against them. In the end, Naruto blew up the airship Dodo tried to escape on while Kimimaro stopped her from being taken. Once he was dead, the machine to melt the snow was turned on. From then on, the area was called Spring Country. With their help, Koyuki was able to take her rightful place as daimyo on the throne, and Sound Village and her country made a trade deal and a pact of friendship. During all of this, Jiraiya went to find his only teammate who was still alive, Tsunade, and told her that Naruto had killed Hiruzen. Even though she knew about the plan for him, she was surprised to hear that he had gained so much power. So she agreed to go back and take over as Hokage instead of Hiruzen. Once she was in charge, she made plans to attack Sound to get to Naruto and bring him back so Jiraiya's seals could be used to control him again. Those plans were put on hold, though, because the invasion had done a lot of damage to their village. This made her realize that this was what Naruto had wanted all along. At this rate, Konoha wouldn't be able to mount a real attack for another year or two, and Tsunade hated that a child who should have been so weak had done this to her grandfather's village. Naruto joined forces with Spring and Suna as she tried to get Konoha back to its full strength. The plan was simple. Naruto killed Rasa because he was hurting Gaara, who used to be his best friend, and Gaara became the new Cage. He had saved Orochimaru's head so that he could help Suna fully with their greedy daimyo, who had weakened them by sending his missions to Konoha instead. He used his illusions to take the form of Orochimaru again, then killed the man in front of his own samurai. Then, he gave Gaara the man's head as proof that he had vengeanced the first one. This showed the new daimyo how important Suna was, so he sent missions there. Their villages made a deal to work together, and Naruto started the new friendship by getting rid of the soul of the demon inside of him. He still had all the power he had before, but the demon no longer talked to him and drove him crazy as he lost sleep. Now that they were working together, Tsunade and everyone else in Konoha knew that their chances of killing the brat were going down, so they had to think outside the box. So, they hired a group of killers to sneak into the group and kill him so that they wouldn't get the blame. Putting this plan into action was smart, but they made a mistake. Zabuza and Haku were sent. From the first time he met them in Wave to when they came back to fight in the 4th Shinobi War, Naruto knew everything about them and how they fought. So they didn't pose any danger to him. He went up against them by himself and beat them until they gave up, but he didn't kill them because he didn't want to. So, he gave them the chance to join his village. They thought about it, and since they were tired of running away from Hunter Nin and other bad guys, they decided to take him up on his offer. So, they stayed there with his army for a long time. Konoha was angry that their plan to kill someone didn't work out the way they wanted it to. Then, Naruto sent a message to Mei Terumi, who was the leader of the group fighting against those who were trying to kill everyone born with a bloodline in Kiri, through his raven. With the help of his troops and Sunas, the rebels were able to blockade the village and kill Yagura. Mei took over as the new Mizukage of Kiri, and she joined the alliance with Sound and Suna. When Naruto asked the other two villages to help him start digging for resources in Whirlpool, the land of his ancestors, the Uzumaki, their relationship grew stronger. Naruto was one of only 3 Uzumaki who were still alive. Since Karen was a part of Sound, Nagato was the only one left in charge of the Akatsuki. With the resources from there, Kiri was able to get back on its feet in just a few months. This made Konoha even more angry, since the more people Naruto worked with, the worse it would be when they finally killed him. So they tried again a different method that would help them in the long run. They told Iwa who Naruto's parents were by using Jiraiya's spy network. As expected, they sent out Hunter Nin and Anbu to kill Naruto because he was Naruto's son. But Naruto knew about this because, with the help of his familiars, he also had a huge spy network. His familiars could talk to animals and learn much more than any human could. With the help of his Sound 4 and Kimimaro, Naruto faced the people who were sent to kill him. They put up the wall to keep the Iwa shinobi from going anywhere else. Then, Naruto beat all the people who came to kill him until they gave up and sealed them away. He then locked them all up, just like he did with his mother, and went to Iwa to put an end to all of this. People were angry and hateful toward him because he was Minato's son, and Onoki was there to deal with him directly. Onoki said that he killed his shinobi, but Naruto just laughed and opened the men's seals to show that they were fine. Even though he was hurt, he was still alive and fine. Onoki was surprised because he thought Naruto would kill one of his shinobi. Naruto told him that he wasn't here to kill them or even hurt them. He just wanted to clear things up between them. After they fought together in the 4th Shinobi War, they became friends, and he wanted that to happen again. So, he gave Onoki the scroll that Minato had used to write down all of his plans for Naruto. The old Kage read them and showed them to anyone who wanted to see them. He looked at the boy with real sympathy because the boy had been through so much pain and would have kept going through it if the boy hadn't done what he did. Then, as a sign of peace, Naruto gave him the scrolls with the Rasengan and the Harishin Jutsu on them. People who were there were shocked that the boy would give up his inheritance in this way. But Naruto said he didn't want the man who had given birth to him to do the things he had written about in his notes. He even stopped using the name Namikaze because he wasn't his father. So they made a deal to work together. Konoha hadn't learned anything from their first 2 plans, so this new one was all or nothing. They tried to get Kumo to attack Naruto by telling him that Naruto was planning to attack, kill, and steal their Kage and Jinchuriki. Again, Naruto found out about this and met the man before the man sent his own shinobi to attack Naruto. As all of this was going on, Sasuke Uchiha was met by his Sound 4, who offered him power if he came with them. Tsunade sent the same people as a retrieval team, just like the last time. But things were different this time. Naruto was told very clearly to kill anyone who came to bring Sasuke back. He told them everything there was to know about every clan heir who would try to get Sasuke back. And since they had been training hard to get stronger over the past few months, this information and training made it so that the retrieval squad didn't have a chance. Shikamaru, Neji, Choji, Kiba, and Shino were all killed when they tried to get Sasuke back. Lee, who came to help after he was healed from the damage Gaara did to him during the Chunin exam, was also killed. The biggest difference this time was that Shino was there to fill in for Naruto, who was no longer there. Even though Lee came to help, Gaara and his siblings were not the same as they were the last time, so the Konoha shinobi did not have the right tools to beat the Sound 4. Kagura fought Lee, but Naruto told him not to let Lee drink the sake he had on him because Lee was an experienced fighter in the style of the Drunken Fists. Kimimaro made sure to throw a bone shuriken that broke the bottle Lee had on him. Lee had no chance against a healthy Kimimaro at his best, and he died when sharp bones went through his vital organs and pierced him. Naruto told his shinobi to bring him the heads of those who had died. They were curious about why he wanted them, but didn't want to ask directly, so they did as they were told. As Sasuke was successfully rescued by his shinobi, Naruto went to Kumo and blended in so well that he made it to the Raikage's office without setting off any alarms, since he wasn't there to attack. Once he got there, he let him know who he was, and they attacked him as he expected, since he had sneaked in, which usually means a plot to kill someone. Naruto didn't attack. Instead, he tried to calm the man down by dodging his attacks. But A was more angry than he seemed, and he wasn't the type to calm down quickly. In the end, Naruto had to tie him up with several ropes made from darkness. Once the man was tied down, Naruto started talking to him and made it clear that he wasn't going to attack him, even though Konoha had said he would. He just wanted to make peace with Kumo and give him the chance to join forces with him in the other villages. A laughed at his offer, but he told Naruto that they could talk if he untied him. Naruto, to his surprise, heard him and did what he said. Once he was free, he started talking because he believed Naruto when he said he wasn't here to hurt him. So he agreed to the alliance, but he wanted something in return. The last time they got a main branch Hyuga, he had the cage bird seal and was killed when he showed up with it. When Naruto asked for that, he just smiled. He knew that he would do exactly that, so he was ready for it. So, he took the body of Hinata Hyuga, who had been knocked out of its bag and showed it to A. This shocked him to no end. They had tried to take her away before, but they failed. Now, it was strange to see her put out like this. During the Chunin exam, Naruto told Kimimaro to take her during the invasion of Konoha. He told him to make it look like she died so that no one would look for her. Kimimaro was able to do this by using a few sealed and preserved dead bodies in an explosive kunai that blew up the building Hinata's teammates saw her go into and then the body that was too burned to identify. Naruto did this on purpose because the liar had both figuratively and literally stabbed him in the heart with the knife she had hidden to do the deed. So, everything else she had would be broken as she was forced to have more and more messed up kids. He took the gift and agreed to the alliance, since Naruto had given him exactly what he wanted. When Konoha heard that Naruto had joined forces with all the other big villages, they were sure that Naruto would use them to attack them, but that didn't happen. What did happen was that Naruto sent back the heads of the clan heirs with a note that made fun of Tsunade for sending children to fight her battles, and they all paid the price for her choice. Soon after that, Tsunade had to step down as Hokage because her order killed so many clan heirs at once, and Danzo was chosen to take her place. Since then, Naruto's actions have made Konoha anything but a bright light in the shinobi world, which is still pretty dark but getting better. In fact, it's the other way around. Every day, Konoha got darker, while other places got brighter, and Danzo started making more problems for the world than he would ever admit. In fact, the War Hawk would never admit that the things he did over the years caused problems for Konoha. In his mind, things weren't like that. Sad to say, Danzo thought that anything outside of Konoha was an enemy of the village, and to be more specific, that it was his enemy, and that it needed to be either destroyed or made a slave. Once Danzo became the official Hokage, he ordered that root be brought back and that 1/3 of the most promising members of each clan be sent to the root program to get proper conditioning, to be the best shinobi in the village. Even though the clan heads were against this at first, they had no choice because their strength was going down and they had no other choice. Naruto could have attacked Konoha with all the help he had, but he didn't. Even though he hated the village and what it had done to him and his friends in the darker future he had stopped so far, he was not a tyrant who started wars like Danzo. Also, he only wanted to live a life that was worth living, which was the main reason he came back. He had been locked up in a cage for thousands of years, and he had spent almost another 2,000 years trying to get revenge on the people who had made his life hell before they killed him and sent him to the real hell. He didn't want to look for those people again. There was the invasion, but that was Orochimaru's plan, which he took over because it was too late to stop. He got the life he wanted and was surrounded by friends he could trust. A team that he would protect with his life and that would do the same for him. Not to mention the fact that he was dating 3 different women, Kin, Tatsuya, and Koyuki, who loved him for who he was as much as he loved them. He had reached his goal, so he would only deal with Konoha again if they challenged him. And he knew that they would. When Sasuke was brought to the village, Naruto was there. Naruto used his power to show the Uchiha his memories of the two of them before they could even say a word. Before his unexpected death, they became close friends. To say that Sasuke was shocked wouldn't do the look on his face justice at all. So, they became friends again like they used to, and Sasuke trained to get stronger the right way so that one day he could kill Itachi and finally get revenge for his clan. And while he was in sound training for a few years, Naruto put him in touch with the people he worked with in the darker future so that they could train together, and they finally reached his goal. And, just like the last time, Sasuke was told the truth about the failed Uchiha rebellion and that he was told to kill his own family. Sasuke swore revenge against the village and trained harder for the day he would get his chance. Years later, the Akatsuki tried to get the Jinchuriki, but Naruto and his shinobi stopped them every time. They did what they did and used shinobi who could counter their advantages. So, one by one, they all fell until only Tobi, Pain, and Konan were left standing. Pain decided to attack Naruto on his own, but Naruto easily killed all 6 of his paths. They were hard to kill with chakra, but they had no defense against magic like the kind he used. He then found Pain's real body, which was being guarded by Konan, and asked him to join him to help make the Uzumaki name great again like it used to be. Before Nagato could answer, Tobi showed up and ripped out his eyes, killing him. Konan joined Naruto because she thought Nagato would have done the same thing if he hadn't been killed. So Naruto gave his relatives a proper burial and waited for the 4th Shinobi War to start. It started when a large group of white Zetsu attacked in the spring because they were seen as the weakest link in the alliance because they didn't have a proper shinobi village to protect them. They survived the attack, but they lost a lot of people. Then, a Kage Summit was called, and all 6 Kages were asked to come. Naruto was recognized as the Kage of the 6th main shinobi village. Naruto told them what he knew about the white Zetsu, including their strengths and weaknesses, while they were there. Once a battle plan was made, Danzo was upset because he wanted to lead the alliance, but Naruto was chosen instead. They got ready for the 2-day war. In the other timeline, there were a lot more casualties than in this one, but Kabuto wasn't alive to help Obito attack them with the bodies of shinobi who had died. Even though that was the case, Madara was still called back. Like the first time, he killed a lot of people, but this time Naruto stopped him and destroyed his body so much that not even ashes were left. Obito was found and put to death for his crimes once he was dead. This brought peace to the elemental countries. But while the war was going on, Danzo was sneaking around trying to get things to work in his favor, like the sneaky jerk that he was. During the meeting of the Kages to talk about what happened after the war, Danzo used the Sharingan he had hidden under bandages to try to control the people there long enough for his hidden root shinobi to kill them. This way, he could use the chaos to slowly take control of the elemental continent and become the supreme ruler. But he didn't know that Naruto knew about his hidden eye because Naruto had seen all of Orochimaru's notes on the subject. So, he had one of his shinobi kill the hidden root in secret so that Danzo wouldn't find out, and when he played his trump card, Sasuke stabbed the man in the throat to get revenge on the man who sent his brother to kill his family. Because of what Danzo did, the other Kages realized that Konoha would keep trying to get rid of them as long as they lived. That's when they decided that maybe 6 major shinobi villages were too many and decided to get rid of one. They attacked Konoha with all of their forces, which caught them by surprise since it had only been a few days since the war and they were still getting better. Without the right defenses, they had no chance against the combined power of so many. Within hours, the village was on fire, and everyone who lived there was killed, except for a few who were kept to continue their clan's bloodlines. They did this because the village had become too bad, and they wanted to stop it from spreading like a plague. All of the Alliance's members watched as the village burned around them, and then they all went home to really rest now that the battle was over. Naruto was the only one left in the village. He stood in the middle of town, right where he would be killed on the day of his wedding to Hinata. He could see the destruction all around him as the flames rose high, but he didn't feel the least bit afraid. He could only smile and then laugh with happiness because he had fixed everything. He killed the people in this evil village before they could find a way to change, so that they could go to heaven while he went to hell. Now they would know about his misery from the darker future. And with that in mind, he slowly started to leave the village, vowing to never go back. After some time. After that day, Naruto had a good life. He had been married to all 3 women at some point in his life. He had children with all 3 of them, and he loved all of them. He made them strong so they could handle anything the world could throw at them, and he helped keep the peace in the elemental countries. There was no fighting between the villages, except for the tests, but those didn't really count because they were just tests. But eventually, a new threat came in the form of a dictator from a faraway country on a different continent. So, the land was at war again, but this time it wasn't as much to Naruto's advantage because the enemy also knew magic. The war was long and bloody, but in the end, they won, even though Naruto had to kill the tyrant himself because the man had kidnapped, raped, and killed Kin, Naruto's wife. So, since they won, they now had access to a lot more technology and magic than they did before. Naruto got older as the land moved forward, and as his body started to break down, he felt like his time was almost up. On his deathbed, he called his family in for one last visit. In his last words, he told them all that he loved them and that he hoped to see them again in the afterlife. With a smile on his face, he said his last words and then died. Naruto's soul floated in the air as he watched his family cry over his dead body. He smiled because he was happy to have a family that loved him after being turned away the first time. Now he just waited for the decision, which would tell him whether he went up or down, and he would accept the decision no matter what. He was surprised that nothing happened as he floated there because when he died the first time, he fell right away. But this time, he didn't feel anything, so he just started to float away to wait for the day when he would be judged for his actions.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.